a warship carrying the most dangerous weapon ever built, completed its mission, and then vanished 900 men, floating in shark-infested waters for nearly 5 days, and the United States Navy didn't even notice she was gone. But here is what makes this story truly terrifying. It wasn't the enemy that abandoned them. It was the very system they had given their lives to protect. And for 72 years, the truth stayed buried. 18,000 feet beneath the sea. Welcome to Deep Sea War Files, where the ocean gives up its secrets, one wreck at a time. Now, before we go any deeper into this story, if you're new here, think of this channel like an old trusted friend who always saves the most important story for last. You know that friend, don't you? It's the one you'd call at midnight and say, "Tell me something the history books didn't." That's exactly what we do here. So if no one has told you to subscribe yet, consider this your gentle reminder, the same way your grandfather would tap the table and say, "Sit down, stay a while." This one is worth your time. Hit that subscribe button. Don't let the next story sail past you. And while you're here, drop a comment below and tell us, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Whether you're in New York or Karachi, London or Lagos, we want to know. This story belongs to all of us. It was the summer of 1945, and the United States Navy needed its most reliable ship for a mission that could not, under any circumstances, be discussed, recorded, or remembered. The ship they chose was USS Indianapolis, hull number CA-35, a battle-hardened Portland-class heavy cruiser that had already earned 10 battle stars across the Pacific. She had carried presidents. She had survived kamikaze strikes. She had outlasted storms that sank lesser vessels. She was, by every measure, the right ship for an impossible job. On July 16, 1945, Indianapolis quietly departed San Francisco's Hunter Point Naval Shipyard. Her crew noticed something unusual immediately. Strange crates had been loaded aboard heavy, sealed, and guarded by Army personnel who answered no questions and gave no explanations. One crate was bolted directly to the floor of the captain's cabin. Most sailors assumed it was classified equipment, standard wartime cargo, nothing worth losing sleep over. They were wrong. Inside those crates were the core components of Little Boy, the uranium-235 atomic bomb that would, within weeks, erase an entire Japanese city from the map and force the end of World War II. Captain Charles McVay himself had not been fully briefed on what his ship was carrying. The compartmentalization was that extreme, that deliberate, that dangerous. The orders were simple and absolute. Cross 5,000 nautical miles to Tinian Island in the Marianas in 10 days, without escort, at maximum sustainable speed. No delays. No questions, no communication unless absolutely necessary. Indianapolis made the crossing in 9.5 days, a speed record for that route that still stands to this day. She arrived at Tinian on July 26, 1945, delivered her cargo quietly. And within hours, the bomb components were in the hands of the team that would load them on to the Enola Gay. The mission was complete. The delivery that would reshape human history had been made. But as Indianapolis turned away from Tinian and pointed her bow toward Leyte Gulf for routine training exercises, no one in the chain of command updated her position in the fleet tracking system. No one flagged her expected arrival time. No one assigned a vessel to watch for her. She had become, officially, invisible, and in 4 days, that invisibility would kill her. July 30th, 1945. The Philippine Sea was calm. Almost too calm. Indianapolis was making 14 knots, cutting through dark water, her crew mostly asleep, unaware that somewhere beneath the surface, something was watching her. Lieutenant Commander Makitsura Hashimoto, commanding officer of Japanese submarine I-58, had been hunting for 3 days without a target worthy of his torpedoes. Then Indianapolis crossed his path. Hashimoto did not hesitate. He fired a spread of 6 Type 95 torpedoes at close range. And then he waited. 12 minutes past midnight. The first torpedo struck the bow. The explosion was catastrophic. It didn't just damage the ship, it erased the entire forward section in seconds. Dozens of men sleeping in their berth spaces below deck never woke up. The second torpedo hit amidships, directly below the bridge, tearing open the engine rooms, killing power, killing communication, killing any chance of an organized response. The lights went out across the entire ship. The PA system died. Captain McVeigh gave the order to abandon ship, but with no power to carry his voice below decks. Hundreds of men never heard it. They felt the ship tilting beneath their feet, heard the groaning of steel that was never designed to bend this way, and made their own desperate decisions in complete darkness. Some grabbed life jackets, many did not. Some found life rafts, most did not. Some made it to the main deck in time, many did not. 12 minutes after the first impact, USS Indianapolis rolled hard to starboard, went down by the bow, and disappeared beneath the Philippine Sea. A 610-foot warship, 10 battle stars, presidential voyages. The most important delivery in naval history, gone in 12 minutes. Approximately 300 men went down with her. Around 900 made it into the water. And that is where the real nightmare began. What followed those 12 minutes became the longest open-water survival ordeal in the entire history of naval warfare. The men of Indianapolis floated in the Philippine Sea for nearly 5 days. 5 days, no food, no fresh water, no shelter from the sun that burned them by day, and no protection from the cold that numbed them by night. Fuel oil coated their skin and blinded their eyes. Salt water invaded every wound. Dehydration set in within hours. And with it came something far more dangerous than physical suffering. It came hallucinations. Men began seeing things that weren't there, islands on the horizon, ships approaching in the distance, fresh water just below the surface. Some men, in their delirium, drank seawater. It killed them faster, but none of that was the worst part. The sharks arrived within hours of the sinking. Oceanic white-up sharks, one of the most aggressive species in open water. Drawn by blood, by sound, by the desperate movement of 900 exhausted men. They circled continuously. They attacked at night when men were too weak to fight back, and sometimes in broad daylight, when they attacked anyway. Men disappeared one by one, sometimes in pairs, pulled beneath the surface without warning, while the others watched and could do nothing. The psychological damage was as devastating as the physical toll. Every hour in that water, men had to make a decision most human beings will never face: keep fighting or let go. On August 2, 1945, for days and nights after the sinking, a routine patrol bomber spotted an oil slick on the surface of the Philippine Sea. The pilot looked closer and saw men. Rescue ships were dispatched immediately. But by the time they pulled the last survivor from the water, only 316 men remained alive. Of the 900 who had made it off the ship, 584 had died in the water, not from the torpedo strike, not from the explosion, from waiting for a rescue that the United States Navy was never looking to make. The ship that delivered the weapon to end the war had been left to die by the war itself, and the question that would haunt the next 72 years was not how she sank, but why. No one came. There is a particular kind of failure that does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself with explosions or alarms. It arrives quietly, through paperwork not filed, through questions not asked, through a ship's name missing from a list that no one bothered to check. This is the failure that truly destroyed USS Indianapolis. Not the torpedoes, not the sharks. not the Philippine Sea. The silence of a system that had already forgotten she existed. Consider the timeline with cold, analytical precision. Indianapolis sank at 12 minutes past midnight on July 30, 1945. She was expected to arrive at Leyte Gulf by 11 a.m. on July 31st. She never arrived, and for nearly 3 full days, not a single person in the United States Navy raised an alarm. Not one. How was this possible? The answer lies in a bureaucratic structure so compartmentalized, so deliberately fragmented, that accountability had been engineered out of the system entirely. The port director's office at Leyte Gulf operated under a standing policy. Ships coming from Guam were not logged as overdue upon non-arrival. Read that again. A warship carrying nearly 1,200 men could simply not show up. And the official response was nothing. No investigation, no search. No signal sent up the chain of command. Just silence. The reasoning behind this policy had once made sense during active combat operations. Ships frequently changed routes, altered arrival times, and operated under communication blackouts. Logging every non-arrival would have flooded the system with false alarms. But that logic applied in the wrong moment, at the wrong time, for the wrong ship, became a death sentence for 584 men floating in open water. And the secrecy surrounding Indianapolis made everything worse. Because her mission had been so classified, so deliberately erased from standard fleet tracking channels. The very officers who might have noticed her absence had no record of her expected movements to begin with. She had been made invisible to protect the atomic bomb, and that invisibility outlived the mission itself. The bomb components had already reached Tinian safely. The secrecy no longer served any strategic purpose. But no one turned it off. No one updated the tracking system. No one sent the simple signal that would have told Fleet Command, Indianapolis has completed her mission. Watch for her arrival. That signal was never sent, and 584 men paid for that silence with their lives. Captain Charles McVeigh survived the sinking. He was pulled from the water on August 2nd. One of 316 men rescued alive. And then, the United States Navy put him on trial. In December 1945, McVeigh was court-martialed on charges of hazarding his vessel by failing to zigzag, a standard evasive maneuver used to avoid submarine attack. The trial was extraordinary for several reasons. The Navy called Lieutenant Commander Hashimoto, the Japanese submarine commander who had sunk Indianapolis, as a witness against McVeigh, an enemy officer, testifying against an American captain, in an American military court. Hashimoto himself stated that the zigzag pattern would have made no difference at the range and angle from which he fired. McVeigh was convicted anyway. He was the only captain in United States Navy history to be court-martialed for the loss of his ship in combat during World War II. The message was unmistakable. When a system fails catastrophically, find one man. Hand him the blame. Close the file. McVeigh carried that verdict for the rest of his life. Hate mail arrived at his home for decades from families of the men who died, who had been led to believe that their sons and husbands had died because of his negligence. On November 6, 1968, Charles McVeigh took his own life. He was found with a toy sailor in his hand. The institutional failure that left 900 men in shark-infested water for 5 days was never prosecuted. The bureaucratic policy that made non-arrival reporting optional was quietly revised without acknowledgement. The officers who failed to cross-check Indianapolis against expected arrivals faced no consequences whatsoever. The system protected itself, as systems always do, and for 72 years, the wreck of USS Indianapolis remained lost on the floor of the Philippine Sea, a physical monument to what happens when accountability is designed out of the institutions that hold the most power over human lives. There is something deeply unsettling about a truth that survives 72 years of silence and still surfaces. Not because the system corrected itself, it's not because institutions finally accepted responsibility, but because one private individual, with resources, determination, and refusal to accept impossible, decided the ocean owed history an answer, and went to collect it. August 2017. The research vessel Petrel moves quietly across the Philippine Sea. On board a team of marine researchers, deep-sea technologists, and historians funded entirely by Paul Allen, Microsoft co-founder, multi-billionaire, and a man who believes that certain debts owed to history cannot be left unpaid. Allen had funded expeditions before, but this one was different. This was not about discovery for discovery's sake. This was about 879 men, whose families had spent 7 decades without a location, without closure, without even a coordinate on a map to point to and say, "He is there. That is where he rests." The search area was staggering in its scale. Hundreds of square miles of Philippine seafloor, at depths exceeding 18,000 feet, where pressure reaches 8,000 pounds per square inch, where no sunlight has penetrated since the ocean was formed, and where conventional technology had absolutely no reach. But 2017 was not 1945, and the tools Allen's team carried aboard the Petrel were unlike anything the Navy had possessed when Indianapolis went down. Their primary instrument was an autonomous underwater vehicle, an AUV, equipped with deep tow side-scan sonar, capable of mapping the seafloor at crushing depths with extraordinary acoustic precision. The AUV made systematic pass after systematic pass, building detailed images of everything resting on the bottom, square mile by square mile, day after day, in complete darkness, at depths where the weight of the ocean above would crush any human diver instantly. Then, on August 19, 2017, the sonar returned something different, a massive metallic signature, consistent in size, shape, and structural profile. With a heavy cruiser, the team deployed their remotely operated vehicle, the ROV, with high-definition cameras, and watched their monitors carefully as it descended through 3.5 miles of black water. For long minutes, there was nothing but darkness and sediment. And then, the lights caught steel, twisted, barnacled. Ancient steel, gun turrets emerged from the darkness. Then the unmistakable triple turret configuration of a Portland-class heavy cruiser. Then hull number 35. Still visible, still legible. After 72 years on the ocean floor, it was Indianapolis, sitting upright, bow section separated but nearby, stern relatively intact, resting in absolute silence. 18,000 feet beneath the surface of the sea that had swallowed her. In 12 minutes, on the night of July 30, 1945, the forensic confirmation was overwhelming. Hull number 35 clearly painted on the bow section. Portland-class architecture exactly matching blueprints on file. 8-inch gun barrels still extended from forward turrets. 4-screw propeller arrangement matching her unique power plant design. Starboard hull damage precisely consistent with torpedo strikes, in the exact locations survivors had described for 7 decades. Debris fields scattered around the main hull, confirming the rapid, catastrophic 12-minute sinking. Exactly as the 316 survivors had testified, the ocean had preserved the evidence perfectly. Every detail the Navy's own investigation had minimized or obscured was sitting intact on the seafloor, waiting patiently for someone willing to look. On August 19, 2017, the United States Navy officially confirmed the identification. After 72 years, Indianapolis had been found. The wreck is now permanently protected under the United States Sunken Military Craft Act. No salvage is permitted. No artifacts may be removed. The site is designated an official war grave, a memorial to 879 men who completed the most important delivery in naval history and were then abandoned by the system they served. The youngest among them was 17 years old. Most never knew what cargo they had carried. They were told nothing, trusted completely, and protected? Not at all. Today, Indianapolis rests in permanent darkness. It's 3.5 miles beneath the Philippine Sea. Her guns still pointing forward. Her hull still carrying the number that identified her to friend and enemy alike. Around her, a deep-sea ecosystem has quietly claimed her steel corals, deep-water fish, organisms that thrive where no human eye was ever meant to see. The ocean has made her part of itself. But here is what the seafloor cannot preserve, and what history must never allow to sink alongside her. The lesson that Indianapolis leaves for every institution, every organization, every system built by human beings and trusted with human lives is precise, uncomfortable, and permanent. Secrecy without accountability kills. Compartmentalization without oversight kills. Bureaucratic indifference dressed as policy kills. The torpedoes sank the ship in 12 minutes. But it was the silence of a system that killed 584 men. Over 5 days. In water they should never have been left to float in alone. USS Indianapolis completed her mission. She delivered the weapon that ended the war. She asked for nothing in return, except the basic institutional duty of care that every organization owes to every person operating under its authority. That duty was abandoned, and 72 years later, Paul Allen's team found the evidence still sitting on the bottom, exactly where the system had left it. The ocean keeps its secrets, but it always, eventually, gives them back.